What's going on? Woo! Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, but it is a special edition of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast because to my left, in person, not virtually, I have my beloved friend and host, Cameron Lawrence, and to my right, I have my beloved friend and co-host Tyler Plath. We are in person doing a live show today. Fellas, it's a pleasure to be here with you both.
It is absolute honor, absolute pleasure to not only do this in person, but to host you guys in the space that I call my own.
I gotta say it's miserable here in Minnesota. The fact that I have learned, I told myself this lie, I believed this lie for my whole life, that we love the cold as Minnesotans. That is a complete lie, because if you're in the warm, you realize just how stupid it is to live in the cold. And yet I'm gonna move back here in a couple of years, and I'm gonna tell myself the same lie for the rest of my life. So I'm glad to be back.
When you are shoveling your driveway, you're gonna be like, you know what? It's not that bad. It could be worse.
When I gotta go to work and I have to be out there at 5 a.m. shoveling my driveway, that's exactly what I'll say.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Cameron he lives down in Florida now. He decided to go get some of that sweet sunshine, and so now him coming back to Minnesota for the holidays. A rude awakening with how brutally cold it's been here, single digits. So we're out here recording Monday, right before Monday Night Football. Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, CamLaw317, Tyler_Plath, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should all be subbed. You should have your notifications turned on so you know when new videos are up. And if you want to join our Chalkboard, we're giving league-winning advice there all throughout the playoffs. And if we don't answer your question, somebody out of the 1,600 people we have in our group chat there will answer your question. It's down the link in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Before we dive into anything in this episode, we got booms and busts. We've got waiver wire ads at the end because they are more important than ever right now as you're trying to win your fantasy championship, or maybe just not lose to, get your loser punishment. But let's cruise through some news and notes from around the league, brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to join over 5 million people playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, use the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Big news that came out today. Eagles quarterback, potential MVP candidate, Jalen Hurts. He's uncertain to play Sunday against the Cowboys due to a sprained shoulder that he suffered during Sunday's win over the Bears. Devastating blow for this team if he cannot play. Granted, the Eagles are going to kind of cruise through the playoffs, so it's not going to surprise me when Jalen Hurts does not play this week, let alone the rest of the regular season, because the Eagles, they have the division on lock. They have the playoffs on lock. They should really just let Jalen Hurts get healthy before the postseason begins.
No, I agree. They need one win, I think, and they clinched the first seed because they have a 3-game lead over the Vikings and they have a 3-game lead over Dallas right now. So they win one of the next 3. So I agree. I don't see why you'd play him if he's at all questionable.
I hate to be that guy, but they actually play on Saturday.
Did I say Sunday?
You said Sunday. They play
during Sunday's win over the Bears. Yes. That's what I said.
So it is. That's why it's so important to pay attention to this, because they play on Saturday and not Sunday.
I did have Saturday in my notes too, and I read it as Sunday.
Yeah, a Christmas
helmet.
Eve game. Helmet over there.
That is actually an important thing just to know.
No.
Well, Lucas is grabbing the helmet. That's an important thing to know moving forward. Most games this week are on Saturday because of Christmas on Sunday. So you need to be ready a day early for all your games. As Lucas comes back, he's bringing the helmet. The helmet is something that we started when we lived in Eau Claire. You get a helmet in hockey, you get a 2-minute minor that you wear the helmet for 2 minutes. If it is something really bad, you get a major penalty. You
5-minute major.
Minutes.
That's a 2-minute minor, though. I read it wrong.
Yes.
We
2-minute minor.
We added a bucket at one point for game misconduct.
Yeah.
We need to bring that back.
The bucket was big.
Back to Jalen Hurts though and the Eagles. I think the Eagles will be just fine though. Do you guys remember who the backup is for the Eagles?
Is it Nick Foles?
It's Gardner Minshew.
It is Gardner Minshew.
It's Gardner Minshew. I say that half joking, but also at the same time, like Gardner Minshew filled in for Hurts last year in a couple games, and they were just fine.
Yep.
Obviously, they're playing Dallas, so it's a bigger game, and then you got to take that into consideration. But all things considered, yes, it hurts to not have Jalen Hurts. Wordplay is elite.
I'll let it slide.
But at the same time, just pay attention because who knows? There could be a chance. Doesn't sound likely, but there's a chance, and it's a Saturday game.
I would just bank on him not playing. Have a backup option ready.
Yes.
Which sucks if you're in the fantasy playoffs because Jalen Hurts likely lifted you there.
Yikes.
Another quarterback who may not play this weekend, Ravens head coach John Harbaugh won't comment on the return of Lamar Jackson from his knee injury. I've just kind of assumed Lamar's going to be out for the foreseeable future. I wasn't banking on having him back this week. But this Ravens team, man, their offense is struggling in the passing game, at least, without Lamar Jackson, which I don't think any of us ever thought we'd say out loud.
Yeah, if he can play, though, he's going to be back because they need him if they want to make the playoffs. That's kind of where they're at. Tyler Huntley is just not getting the job done. They only scored 3 points against the Browns. I know that what's his name? Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals, but even then, you don't score. They still would have scored a touchdown the whole game. So
yeah,
that's tough.
I don't understand though why you're throwing the ball 30 times with Tyler Huntley and you're only giving J.K. Dobbins 13 carries when he runs for 125 yards on those 13 carries.
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me, and to me, that seems like that's a coaching error. Hopefully Lamar gets back soon because, again, we're in fantasy playoffs and you need a guy like Lamar Jackson back. But until then, for every other Ravens player, doesn't look too great.
No. As I take off the helmet for serving my 2-minute minor, there we go. There's our introduction of the helmet to the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. As I do that, let's fly through the rest of these news and notes here because we do have a lot to get to. Tests come back negative on Austin Eckler's shoulder injury per head coach Brandon Staley, which is good news. He did return in that game yesterday, I do believe. Colts star running back Jonathan Taylor diagnosed with a high ankle sprain. He's unlikely to play again this season. We will talk about what to do with this later in the episode because I know we could sit here and dissect that right now. But I promise you, we're going to tell you what to do later in this episode when it comes to the waiver wire. If you haven't been listening to us already, Tyler Lockett, he's expected to have surgery to repair and stabilize his fractured finger. It is possible he only misses 1 game, but a firm timetable will be available post-surgery. So if you're a Tyler Lockett manager, that is something to keep an eye on. Just general yes, no. Any interest in Marquise Goodwin with Tyler Lockett now being out?
I have an interest in at least picking him up. I would only play him if I don't have another option. But when he has filled in as the second option in this offense, he's played pretty well. So that he's not a bad. I think he's a good pickup. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yep.
Their next opponents are Kansas City, the Jets, and the Rams. Kansas City is a great matchup. I know Kansas City will still win that game, but for fantasy purposes,
It's a good matchup.
they just allow fantasy points like no tomorrow. The Jets, it's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup.
Yeah.
So if there is a week to play Goodwin, it's going to be this week, but you're not going to force him into your lineup. But
He's a break the glass emergency option
Yes.
kind of guy.
yep, and to Cam's point, exactly, he's definitely worth rostering. Again, just you can't force him into your lineup.
Zonovan Knight, he's dealing with an ankle injury following Sunday's loss to the Lions. He wasn't getting much going on the ground prior to that anyways.
No.
This Lions run, I need to say this again. We can't just stop carrying on 6-week narratives that apply to the entire season on defenses because the Lions have been one of the best teams against the run the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Like, can we take a second to acknowledge that? Like, the Lions aren't this piss poor bottom tier run defense like they were at the start of the year. All of a sudden, like, the Lions have been pretty dang good against the run as of late.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to take a moment to pause because if you have a running back that's now playing against the Lions, I don't think you can safely assume that that running back is going to pop off for 20 plus, for 15 plus. Like, I actually think you should be more pessimistic with running backs against the Lions going forward. Like, they've been that good as of late against the run. They've really toughened up.
I mean, they've got Carolina and Chicago coming up. The Lions do. I'm not starting Foreman or Hubbard.
Nope.
Then they get Chicago, Montgomery.
Volume play,
but
divisional matchup in the trenches. I would play him, but that's about it.
And then they get Green Bay, and Green Bay is Green Bay.
Yeah.
So
that's all receiving for Aaron Jones.
They are 8th in least amount of points allowed to the fantasy running back position on the season right now.
The season. So they've really plummeted since the first 6 weeks.
But also part of that is teams throw the ball all over them. They're first in giving up points to quarterback, second to giving up points to wide receivers, and 5th giving up points to tight ends. So but when you think about it, like we think about Houston's good against quarterbacks, bad against the run. But Detroit actually keeps games competitive, so teams have to throw on them.
Yes.
Right? Detroit puts up points, so teams aren't able to just run the ball the whole game against them.
Right. I was just going to say they are the inverse of the Houston Texans, where the offense is so bad that teams just run all over the Houston Texans, but the Detroit offense is so good that teams actually just need to throw to keep up with them at the same time, which you never thought you would say. Last piece of news, Ryan Tannehill. He sustained an ankle injury during week 15. He did leave the game for a short period of time, did return, but he could miss some time. But until further notice, if he is healthy, he is going to be the starter in week 16 for this team. That was news and notes brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to play fantasy sports with over 5 million people on the platform, you can check out the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Week 15 booms and busts of the week, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Let's dive in. Let's start with the running backs. I can't believe it. Jerick McKinnon is the overall running back 1 on the week as of this podcast. 10 attempts, 52 yards and a score. Added 8 receptions on 8 targets for 70 yards and a score. 34.2 fantasy points on the week. Jerick McKinnon has been the overall running back 1 in back-to-back weeks now. We have to ask the question, is he this year's Rashad Penny?
I don't believe he is, just because Penny was getting such a ridiculous volume in the run game. And I just feel like this receiving work can't keep up at the same pace. I think he can be a start moving forward. I don't think he's the next Rashad Penny.
Yeah, the receiving work is very interesting because, I mean, McKinnon is technically like the second pass catching option in this offense over the past 2 weeks, just with the amount of receiving work. But if there's anything we've noticed with Kansas City over this year, besides, if your name is Travis Kelce, receiving work really isn't sticky for the team. This ball really kind of rotates around. So if anything, I would expect a drop off in the future when it comes to this kind of volume that McKinnon is seeing. But at the same time, can't deny that the guy's playing incredibly good.
Yes.
He's playing incredibly good. He's playing insanely good, but he's not the next Rashad Penny. He's not this year's Rashad Penny because he's not getting it done in the rushing game like Rashad Penny was. We're talking about a guy who had 4 games of 120 plus rushing yards during the final 5 weeks of the season last year. Jerick McKinnon, Tyler, like you said, it's all receiving work for Jerick McKinnon. Now, I'm not docking the guy. He's been playing out of his mind recently. When I see Rashad Penny have multiple 100-plus yard rushing games, I think, holy crap, they're going to keep feeding him the football. When I see 8 receptions in only 2 weeks for this guy, I'm not going that far. I think some people are going to be looking to make this comparison. And I know I said we had to ask the question, but I don't think we need to. I don't think Jerick McKinnon is this year's Rashad Penny. I know he gets Seattle next week. That's not a matchup that I don't think Jerick McKinnon exposes. I think that's a matchup Isaiah Pacheco exposes.
Yeah, that's the other thing for Jerick McKinnon is, right, we're looking at Rashad Penny. This is a guy who was 23 touches, 24 touches, 29, 32 touches in that stretch. Jerick McKinnon this week had 18. That's his most he's had all season.
Yes.
Right. But he also has Isaiah Pacheco, who had 14 on his own. Pacheco next week, if he gets the ball rolling, right, if he's running downhill, he's going to see more and more attempts. And that just means Jerick McKinnon's role shrinks, especially in the run game.
This is not to take away from Jerick McKinnon.
No.
This is not to take away from Jerick McKinnon at all. He has been playing out of his mind recently.
Yes.
This is all credit to Jerick McKinnon. He has been incredible, but I don't think we can jump to making him this playoff hero that we might want to try and carve him out to be after what we got with Rashad Penny last year.
Mm-hmm.
Running back 2 on the week, Dalvin Cook. 17 for 95. Didn't score on the ground, but he did through the air. 4 receptions, 95 yards, 27 fantasy points on the week. It's what we all know and love from Dalvin Cook. This is what you expected out of your first-round pick. And granted, you did kind of get bailed out on a big, correct me if I'm wrong, 44-yard rush during the week. And also, obviously, if you go 4 for 95, you had a massive reception in there as well.
Yeah, he had a 60-yard receiving touchdown right at the end of the game. So obviously 14 points right there, or 13 points right there. But you know, when you have someone as explosive as Dalvin Cook, you expect to get these big rushes every once in a while.
Yes.
And so when you get a game like this, we'll talk about a guy, Nick Chubb, later. He's another guy that you expect it from. You expect these big rushing touchdowns. But when you don't get it, you end up with a week like Nick Chubb, weeks like Dalvin Cook's had in the past.
I think Dalvin Cook is going to be a guy that we see consistently in the top 10 for the rest of the season.
Yep.
They get the Giants this week. They get Green Bay next week, and then they finish up with Chicago.
Ugh.
I know that this offense goes through Kirk and Justin Jefferson. Dalvin Cook is going to get his. He has been getting his. It's just a matter of, has he been efficient with his touches? This Sunday or this Saturday, he was.
Yeah.
He was. And then now he's getting better I shouldn't say better. He's getting more ideal matchups down the stretch. I think Cook is going to be someone we see much more consistently in this top 10 list.
Guy we have been seeing consistently in this top 10 list, Derrick Henry. The King. Running back 3 on the week. 21 for 104 and a score. Caught 4 passes for 59 yards on 4 targets. 26.3 fantasy points. I see 4 targets and 59 yards for Derrick Henry, and I think, what a miracle. Like that's kind of sad. But like, I mean, look, they're getting him more involved in the passing attack this year. Which is what we've been waiting for with Derrick Henry. We always thought he was just a one-trick pony of, oh, look, he's just going to rush for 4 yards per carry and get 28 touches a game. Attempt merchant, as I've heard some people deem him as. I mean, in some ways it's true, right? Derrick Henry's always been a high-volume guy, but now we see him getting involved in the passing attack, and look what it does for his fantasy value. Keeps him as a top 3 option, even despite a year where he hasn't, been as peak form, I guess, maybe to put it to for lack of a better term, as he's typically been in the past. But I don't know, how much more do we need to add on Derrick Henry against the Los Angeles Chargers, who are doo-doo against the run.
He's just not human. Like, just normal human rules don't apply to Derrick Henry. This is a guy who's seen 20 plus touches 4 years in a row. What that means, 20 plus touches means you're seeing 300 plus carries
4 years in a row, as in like per game.
Yes, 20 carries per game for 4 years in a row. That is ridiculous.
Yes.
Most running backs see that 2 years in a row, see an extreme drop off. Derrick Henry is 28, coming off a foot injury, seeing this many carries. This man is unbelievably ridiculous.
He was the Titans' leading receiver in this game. No one had more than 4 catches. Chigakonkwo had 4 catches, but he only had 54 yards, and Henry bested that with 59.
Oh, no.
All this to say, Henry will be top 10 rest of the season because of their schedule.
Oh, it's so good.
The receiving work, it was nice to see for once. It's not really going to stick around for much longer.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He gets 3 divisional opponents to close out the season.
He gets Dallas
That's
in the
right.
fantasy championship game, but Dallas has been bad against the run. They've been allowing a high yardage now.
They just
Yes.
allowed
So-
ETN to jump himself.
The-
All right, that was mean.
That
That
was
was
mean.
uncalled for.
12.7 fantasy points for ETN on the week. Respectable, but I mean, yeah. So the Dallas has been allowing a ton of rushing yards, actually been high efficiency against the run as well. So I don't think that's as bad of a match for Derrick Henry as we anticipate. Running back 4 on the week. Let's keep it moving. Christian McCaffrey, 26 for 108 and a score, caught 6 passes, 30 yards as well, 25.8 fantasy points. With no Debo, you're going again. We're talking about it. Christian McCaffrey has the capacity now in this offense to get back to that 25-30 touch range. I know we originally said that, and some people were like, dude, Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey does not see that kind of volume or will not see that kind of volume in this offense. Without Debo, he's 30 34 opportunities in this game, 32 touches. He's going to see this kind of volume, and he's going to, excuse me, absolutely thrive on it.
Yeah, I mean he's
Goodness.
probably going to be the running back one at the end of or over the playoff stretch when we look back at it. I mean, this is like his third game in a row, 25 plus points, and he's a guy. We talk about Jared McKinnon. Oh, we don't know if that receiving volume's going to stick. It is stuck for Christian McCaffrey's entire career, so it's going to stick for him moving forward.
A little victory lap here. Who said to take a McCaffrey 101 this year? That man right over there.
Yeah, Cameron was adamant on it.
I was not going to back down. But that's the thing. At the beginning of the year, we knew how good he was, right? That wasn't
right.
It was just, is he going to be healthy for a full season?
Yeah.
And getting traded to the 49ers did not hurt.
No, did not hurt at all. Gets Washington, Vegas, Arizona over the final 3 weeks. Washington got chewed up by Saquon Barkley. And Vegas and Arizona, yeah, those are two great matchups. I want to play my running backs. So.
Yes. This next guy played Vegas.
Oh my goodness, yeah, he did. Ramondre Stevenson. Can we 19 for 172? Ramondre. I'm grateful I had a first round buy in the league where I have Ramondre Stevenson in and made the playoffs. I really could have used this performance next week though when I'm playing to get into the championship. Scored on the ground as well. Added two catches, -4 yards though, but didn't matter. 24.8 fantasy points. The running back 5 on the week. Ramondre Stevenson is a league winner, is he not?
He is. He 100% is. I mean, he's drafted in the 8th round. It doesn't get much better than that. He's definitely a league winner. I will say though, he started the worst play in Bill Belichick history to lose that game. Like if you haven't seen the end of that game, you have to go look at it.
It's awful
because if you asked if a Bill Belichick team would ever run that kind of a play or ever do something like that, you would say there's not a chance. There's not a chance.
Not a chance in the world.
Yeah.
He gets Cincinnati, Miami, and Buffalo in the next 3 weeks.
Oof.
Those are some tough matchups.
I don't care.
He's seen no more than 3 targets per game the past 2 games.
I don't care.
League winner.
Yeah, league winner. Yeah,
to the moon.
I don't care because Ramondre Stevenson so he hasn't seen more than 4 targets. You said the last 2 games. Is that what you said?
No more than 3.
More than 3 the past 2 games. What has he seen in the prior games though? I don't want to take a 2-game sample size with a nicked up Ramondre Stevenson and use that as my sample for the final weeks.
5 in week 6, 8, 7, 7, 6, 10, and 8 in following games.
And that's what I think Ramondre Stevenson is going to continue to be the rest of the year. I don't think this is representative of these last 2 games are representative of what Ramondre will be the rest of the season.
I would agree.
Running back 6 on the week. David Montgomery. This is an ugly stat line. 12 for 53 and a score. 3 receptions, 38 yards and a score as well. It doesn't matter. 24.1 fantasy points. This is just like the ugly, gross volume. It's not even a volume play. He only got 15 touches. Running back 6 on the week, though.
The touchdowns carried him. I mean, that's the only explanation.
Half of his points.
It is. And when you've got Buffalo, Detroit for your next 2 games, I don't see a way where we see Montgomery find the end zone. Maybe once, but
he'll find the end zone.
I mean, was it his rushing touchdown where Fields had run like 40 some yards, stepped out of bounds, and then they gave the ball to Montgomery?
Yeah.
This stat line should gross you out. You're thankful that you had him this week, but we are not too optimistic next couple weeks.
Yeah, Montgomery probably won't be a top 15 option for me the next 2 weeks if I had to guess. Saquon Barkley, running back 7 on the week, 18 for 87 and a score, 5 for 33, 23 fantasy points on the week. He's Saquon Barkley. He once again is very good.
You just gotta be ecstatic with the fact that he's seen 8 targets.
Yes.
It's just those games where he gets 2, 3 targets. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't help the team. It only hurts the team. And then now the fact that, hey, he has a good week. We win the game. He gets 8 targets. Maybe you should do it again. So that's all you can hope for as a fantasy manager.
That's what I've been waiting for this entire season as a David Montgomery. We just talked about him. Saquon Barkley. Is that helmet worthy? You can call me out of my helmets. As a Saquon Barkley manager. Like you look at Saquon Barkley over the past few games. I'm pulling it up on my phone. As you can see, I have my phone right in front of me. I want to go back and find his targets on the season. So over the past few weeks, he's been better. 5'6", 5'2", 8. But that's the first time he's eclipsed 5 since week 5 of the season where he hit 6. And they kept saying, we're going to get Saquon involved in the passing attack more. We're going to get Saquon involved in the passing attack more. I thought it would be more like this every week. Maybe I had my expectations too high, but it's certainly encouraging nonetheless.
When he was his best, his rookie season, this is what it
This
looked
is what
like
it was.
every single week. And he is by far the best player on their offense. It's not even remotely close.
Not
so
close.
The fact they don't do this more often is just mind-boggling.
Tyler Algier, he was running back 8 on the week, 17 for 139 and a score, added a reception for -3 yards, 22.6 fantasy points. I'm going to can Tyler Algier for the waiver ads because we will talk about him as I just spoiled it in the waiver ads. Latavius Murray, running back 9 on the week, 24 for 130 and a score, 1 reception, 12 yards. I will say Marlon Mack did also score in this game. Tyler, what's your confidence level in Latavius Murray going forward?
He's intriguing because he's the lead back in the backfield.
Yep.
But when Marlon Mack, is taking away receiving work, you're then just looking at just carries, and those are pretty. I'll just say they're volatile. It depends on the matchup, depends on how the game goes and game scripts and all that kind of stuff. He is maybe a flex, but for me, it depends on matchup still, and that's not what you're looking for in fantasy playoffs.
Latavius Murray, he's a tough one. He's a tough one going forward, but lead back in an offense, I think he's a flex consideration from here on out. James Conner fell into the end zone, 16 for 63 in a score, 3 receptions, 28 yards, 18.1 fantasy points to wrap out the top 10 running backs.
Yeah, I mean, he's the same running back he's always been in Arizona. They run the ball inside the 5. He's going to score a touchdown. That's just kind of how James Conner works.
Yes, James, he's just going to discuss. He's going to be this top 12 guy rest of season because he just falls into the end zone. And he's like a Montgomery, yes. Right? Where he's just going to get this gross volume that's going to pan out. Yes. Wide receiver booms of the week. Let's move on. Keep things moving here. Wide receiver 1 overall this week. He continues to be great. Zay Jones, 6 receptions, 109 yards, 3 touchdowns on the week. I want to talk about Zay Jones a little bit here. We're going to talk about him more in depth later, but how sustainable is this for Zay Jones? He's been seeing the volume recently. He's been great though recently. Like, I want to continue to buy into Zay Jones, the talent.
He's played himself into your starting lineup. I mean, even before this game, for me, it was, week 10 when he went for eight receptions, 10 targets, 68 yards against Kansas City. And then they had a bye week, but then they came back against Baltimore and he had 11 catches, 145 yards against Baltimore. Then he had a little dud against Detroit because, let's be honest, no one did good for Jacksonville in that game. But then he came back in Tennessee, 8 for 77 and a touchdown. Like, for me, that was enough to put him into a starting lineup. And then he rewarded managers nicely if you did start him with a wide receiver 1 performance. And again, what I said when I started off, he's played his way into your lineup. You can't take him out at this point. You can't.
No, he's locked into your flex spot. It seems like going forward, I don't want to put labels. Again, I don't want to put labels, but we're searching for these playoff heroes. Cameron, is Zay Jones this year's Amon-Ra, St. Brown?
I do think that he more resembles Amon-Ra than how we were saying Jerick McKinnon to Rashad Penny. I think they're closer just because Zay Jones has been getting the volume. The volume's been insane. That was what should stick out to you from what Ty was reading off. Not like the yards, yes, they can come and go. Touchdowns can come and go, but it was 11 targets, 14 targets, right? These ridiculous amount of targets. And it's not like Christian Kirk isn't getting any targets either. Christian Kirk's had 15 points, 12 points, right? So it can keep coming. And this offense is starting to click. Dallas is a really good defense. Mm-hmm. They are. And now to see Zay Jones finishing top 10, 3 of the last 4 weeks, wide receiver 5 over the last 5 weeks. Yeah, he definitely has that potential to be this year's playoff hero at the wide receiver position.
10 targets, 14 targets, 7 targets, 12, 8
It's crazy.
over the last 5 games for Zay Jones. I'm chasing that volume all day long if he's going to stay this involved in this offense. KJ Osborne, wide receiver 2 on the week. Whopping 16 targets. He caught 10 of them for 157 yards and a score, 31.7 fantasy points. For either of you two, any interest in KJ Osborne going forward? We can keep this short and sweet.
No, he's the 5th at best 4th option on this Vikings offense.
Agreed.
Make it 3. If you want to take a flyer on him, if you want to stash him for future use, fine, so be it. But where the Colts were banged up this week was the slot cornerback position. So KJ Osborne and his teammate, the wide receiver 3 on the week, Justin Jefferson, took advantage of that. JJ caught 12 for 123 and a score, 30.3 fantasy points. Can we just continue to say Justin Jefferson is great and he'll probably be the wide receiver 1 overall the rest of the season?
Yeah, he's your offensive player of the year. That's what he's going to end up being at the end of the year.
That's what he's going to end up being. I 100% agree. AJ Brown. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Ty?
Nope, that was spot on.
AJ Brown, 19 receptions, 16 targets, 181 yards. Jalen Hurts was slinging the ball around on Sunday, 27.1 fantasy points. AJ Brown, can we keep this short and sweet again? He is going to be a top. Well, let's do this. AJ Brown is going to be a top blank wide receiver rest of season.
Who they got? I was just looking at.
They got Dallas, the
New
Saints, and the Giants.
Top 7, the way he's been playing.
No Jalen Hurts, keep in mind.
Oh,
Likely no Jalen Hurts.
never mind. I take that back completely. I mean, he's for sure still top 15.
Yeah,
I would say probably top 12.
I would push top 12. You could talk me into top 10, but I'll settle for top 12.
He's
right
still an automatic start. I think
Yes.
that's where we settle at.
Oh, he's an automatic start still, but I think you both say top 12. I think I can't go that far. I can only say top 15.
Fine.
I like Gardner Minshew. I do. He's no Jalen Hurts, though.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I'm saying that now, but he's no Jalen Hurts. AJ Brown, you're still starting him from here on
Yes.
out, though. Wide receiver 5 on the week, Russell Gage, leading the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in targets this past week. 8 receptions on 12 targets, 59 yards, 2 scores, 25.9 fantasy points. Gage has finished as the wide receiver 46 or worse in 8 of 9 games this year. The only other game he didn't, he was also the wide receiver 5 on the week. Fun fact. Any interest in Russell Gage? Keep it short and sweet. Yes, no, maybe so.
No, he's same tier as KJ Osborne for me.
Agreed.
Make it 3. Noah Brown. Getting some really whack names in here this week. 6 receptions, 9 targets, 49 yards, 2 scores, 22.9 fantasy points. I repeat the same question.
Nope.
Especially since he lost the game for them. No.
If you didn't see that interception at the end of the game, squaring the numbers, pick 6 for the score. 100% agree. I do not have any interest in Noah Brown going forward, especially with only 49. You see these low receiving yard totals as well, 59, 49. You get the 2 scores. It's like, okay, well, that's fairly inflated. Chris Godwin, 8 of 8, 83 and a score, 22.3 fantasy points. I hope you listen to us. We've told you repeatedly to go out and get Chris Godwin before the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, he's been nothing short of, spectacular on just a gross offense. I mean, Tampa Bay's been, their offense as a whole has looked awful. And Chris Godwin's consistently putting up 8 targets, 6+ catches, 80 yards, then touchdown here or there.
Yeah, he has been absolutely great in this Tampa Bay offense. He's come back and he has kind of sunk Mike Evans in a lot of ways. We said Chris Godwin has this great upside once he returns, and lo and behold, now here's Chris Godwin showing out for you second half of the year. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 8, 9 receptions, 13 targets, 69 yards, and a score, 21.9 fantasy points. Tyreek Hill, top 5 wide receiver rest of season. Can we move on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Jahan Dotson, 4 receptions, 6 targets, 105 yards and a score, 20.5 fantasy points. So we aren't interested in KJ Osborne. We aren't interested in Russell Gage. We aren't interested in Noah Brown. Are we interested in Jahan Dotson?
Yes, but not. It's tough because he's had back-to-back weeks with scores. Can you rely on that? Not necessarily. But I just look at the situation for Washington where they're just barely hanging on to a wild card spot. They need to have their guys. They need to win. I think Jahan Dotson can benefit from that, but the volume has not been great.
Yep.
No, since his return in week 10, one target, 2 targets, 1 target. Week 13, 9 targets. Last week, 6 targets now. Has been a top 20 wide receiver, the past 2 games. Obviously, top 10 this past week. I am treating him. I'm trying to recall who we talked about earlier, where I'm willing to put him at the end of my bench and stash him away just to see what does happen moving forward. I can't remember who it was that we talked about.
Marquise Goodwin.
Yes, that was a Marquise Goodwin with the Tyler Lockett injury. Yes, I'm interested in stashing him at the end of my bench at least. Just because I think he is starting to get more of a prevalent role in this offense once again. Wrapping out the top 10, Jalen Waddle, 3 receptions, 7 targets, 114 yards, and a score of 20.4 fantasy points. We're lucky we got a big play out of Waddle this week because this was starting to look like another very down week for Waddle. But rest of season, I want to play these Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Enough said there.
Yeah, the only scary part about Waddle is he has the least amount of receptions of any wide receiver in the top 17, second least to only Brandon Ayuk with only 62 receptions. No other player in the top 10 has less than 74, and that's AJ Brown. So it is a little scary if he doesn't get that big play, but like you said, this is an offense that gets big plays, and Jalen Waddle is very fast and exploits that a lot.
Quarterback booms of the week. Let's keep it rolling here. Jalen Hurts. 36.7 fantasy points. So overall quarterback one. Goodness, I almost said running back there. These are borderline helmets, people. Quarterback one on the week. 22 of 37. Is it true he didn't throw a passing touchdown this week? But he rushed for 3 touchdowns? Is that true?
Yes.
What?
Yep.
Oh, man.
That boy good.
That boy good. He is very, very good.
315 yards.
315 passing yards. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. Jalen Hurts, though. I mean, he won you the first round. I don't think he's going to win you round 2 or 3, though, because he's not going to be on the field if I had to take a guess. And we talked about this earlier. It would make sense for the Eagles to sit him, let this offense and defense go out and win you a game the final 3 weeks of the season. And Jalen Hurts, I look, this might be the last we've seen from him this year for fantasy wise.
Which is sad because over the last 4 weeks, obviously he's the quarterback 1 overall, but he's averaging 32.8 fantasy points a game, and that's 6 more than Josh Allen, who's a quarterback 2 in that stretch. That's
such a brutal blow.
It's a brutal blow, but obviously, part of the reason why everyone got so excited about Justin Fields was because it's Justin Fields on the Chicago Bears.
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts deserves more praise than Justin Fields got during his stretch based off of these last 4 weeks. It's been incredible, and it stinks. Because, like you said, there's a very good chance we don't see him the rest of the regular season because Philly really has no need to force him to continue to play and stuff.
I want to ask this question, though, because we do need to take the time to actually discuss this if we're going to do this due diligence. If you have Jalen Hurts near the fantasy playoffs, what in the world do you do? We look at streaming options. Jared Goff, he's been a reliable streaming option, but he's playing against Carolina, who's actually been sneaky good against quarterbacks as of recent. Derek Carr against Pittsburgh, not great. Pittsburgh secondary has been a little bit leaky, but they've been better in recent weeks. Brock Purdy gets Washington, who's buckled up. Daniel Jones against the Vikings, maybe. Maybe Russ against the Rams. If he's back, do you really want to play Russell Wilson, though? Sam Darnold, do you really want to trust Sam Darnold against... He gets the Detroit Lions, but do you really want to trust Sam Darnold? So what do you do if you're a Jalen Hurts manager? All those guys I listed, Andy Holloway, Fantasy Footballers, laid out a bunch of options for sub 50% roster quarterbacks. That was a list that he laid out. Is one of those guys on that list intriguing to you at all whatsoever to replace Jalen Hurts for at least next week, if not the rest of the season?
Goff would be up there for sure. I know he's going to be on the road. That's the scary part, right? He has not played well on the road, but Daniel Jones is probably the guy I would lean, right? If I'm looking at my quarterback, I want a guy who's going to help me win the week. I guess, well, I shouldn't say that. You know, I probably lean Goff because I think Goff, no matter what's going to get me between 14 and 21 points, whereas Daniel Jones is going to go 9 or 35, right? I think if I take back completely what I said. If I'm looking at, I want Jared Goff just because I know I'm going to get consistent points and he's not going to lose me the week against Carolina.
I lean Brock Purdy. I know he's got Washington next, and that's a tough matchup, but when you've got playmakers like Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Purdy's going to be he's the distributor, but then also a benefactor of having those guys on his team. And that's no disrespect to Detroit, because Detroit has Amon-Ra St. Brown. DJ Chark has been, producing lately. But like I said, with Brock Purdy going against Washington, then he gets Vegas the week after, and then he finishes the season with Arizona. Give me the playmakers that Purdy has at his disposal. And Purdy has not disappointed. I know it's not been super great weeks. He has 15 fantasy points, 16 fantasy points. But really, sometimes that's all you really need is just a consistent floor. And if Purdy's going to give me 15, 16 a week, maybe more sometimes, I'll take it.
I'm going to take Daniel Jones against Minnesota in week 16 for sure. I firmly believe if the Indianapolis Colts, if their defense didn't come out and just absolutely embarrass the Vikings right away, I think Matt Ryan would have had a decent week. I don't think Matt Ryan would have been stuck at 10 fantasy points the rest of the day because the Colts were up 33-0 and just played conservative the rest of the game, which I don't blame them for doing. So I'm going to take Daniel Jones against the Vikings, who have been putrid against quarterbacks, despite Matt Ryan not having a good game last week. But again, that was because of the Colts defense. I'll take Daniel Jones over all those guys. And the Vikings don't know how to defend mobile quarterbacks.
Yep.
The Vikings don't know how to defend mobile quarterbacks. We know this as Minnesota fans. The Vikings' kryptonite is mobile quarterbacks. So Daniel Jones being able to scramble outside of the pocket, create things with his legs as well. We look at Daniel Jones the past 3 weeks, 12 rushing attempts, 4 rushing attempts, 10 rushing attempts. In that 1 week with 4 rushing attempts, he did score on the ground as well. I will take that upside to replace Jalen Hurts. I want to make sure we did our due diligence there. I know that was a little bit longer than we spend on a quarterback, but clearly Jalen Hurts is one of the top 1 guys rest of season.
Yeah.
We have to talk about how to replace him because he is too big of an asset to your fantasy team to not be thinking about that. Let's start flying through the rest of these guys. Josh Allen, 25 of 40, 304 and 4, 10 rushing attempts, 77 yards. He threw 4 touchdowns on the day, 35.9 fantasy points. Josh Allen is really good at football. Can we move on?
Yep.
Kirk Cousins, 34 of 54, 460 and 4. Threw 2 picks, but didn't matter. 34.4 fantasy points. Can we just chalk this up to they were down 33-0, and the only thing the Vikings had to do was the only thing they could do was throw the football.
Yeah, you're not expecting this every week.
You're not. You're just not.
No, but I would like just to state this. We caught so much flack in the offseason, in the preseason, for saying that Kirk Cousins was a top 10 quarterback over Derek Carr.
Look at him now.
Y'all are awfully quiet now. Awfully quiet.
Patrick Mahomes, he was the quarterback 4 on the week, 36 of 41. He only didn't complete 5 passes. That's 36 and 2. Best quarterback in the NFL right now. 5 rushing attempts, 33 yards and a score. He threw 2 as well. 32.7 fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes, he's top 3 rest of season. Can we move on?
Yep.
Trevor Lawrence. Woo, baby.
He's good at football.
Quarterback 5 on the week, 27 to 42, 318, and 4 tutties. Threw a pick, but added 3 rushing attempts for 21 yards, 27.8 fantasy points. Tyler, I gotta give you a handshake. Because prior to the season, this man right here, and I'm proud to say I sided with this man, said that Trevor Lawrence was going to be your breakout quarterback ahead of Tua Tagovailoa. Now, Tua has been awfully great this season as well. But Trevor Lawrence, averaging more fantasy points per game than Tua Tagovailoa right now. What would you like to add on to top of that, Ty?
He's been a top 5 quarterback in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's finished in the top 10 quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times this year. Finished as a top 12, 9 games out of the year.
He's been so good this year. Not enough people are talking about it.
Not enough people are talking about it, and it's because he plays in Jacksonville when Jacksonville's not winning games. And that's a travesty because this is exactly what people were talking about when Trevor Lawrence was coming out of the draft.
Yes.
As a number 1 pick, someone that can sling the ball around the field, who can get tons of yards, put up points, and that's what he's been doing. And he doesn't have great rushing upside. He does have 4 rushing touchdowns this year.
He does.
So you throw in the occasional rushing touchdown plus the hot streak that he's on right now. Trevor Lawrence is that dude, and people need to pay attention to Trevor Lawrence.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Joe Burrow, quarterback 6 on the week, 27 to 39. Only threw for 200 yards, but 4 touchdowns against the Buccaneers after their colossal collapse. Well, not as colossal as Indianapolis Colts. I digress. 25.8 fantasy points. Joe Burrow, he's top 7 rest of season. Can we move on?
Yeah, he has Jamar Chase back, so that means he's really good.
100% agree. Justin Fields only threw 21 passes, but completed 14 of them for 152 and 2. This is what you get with Justin Fields. 15 rushing attempts, 95 yards, 23.6 fantasy points. Justin Fields, he's top 7 rest of season because of his rushing upside. Is there anything you want to add on top of that, Cameron?
He's got 1,000 yards rushing now. Over half of his fantasy points this season have come on the ground. Actually, almost 60% of his fantasy points this season have come on the ground. This dude he's more Lamar Jackson than Lamar Jackson was because he just completely runs the ball. But yeah, the rushing makes him so unbelievably consistent. It's crazy.
Here's the other thing. We talk player props on our Stardom Saturday episodes. Justin Fields has gone over 71 rushing yards in 7 of his last 8 games. Any line that is below 70 is an automatic over at this point.
I was going to add that. I didn't realize it was that insane, but that was going to be my final comment was I keep seeing Justin Fields rushing line at like 69.5, 70.5 rushing yards. I'm like, if you see that line, just pound the over. Just take the over because it doesn't matter who the matchup is. Justin Fields is a one read and scramble kind of guy. Dak Prescott, 23 of 30, 256 and 3. He's been great since he returned from injury. He's top 10 rest of season. How much do we want to elaborate on Dak Prescott here?
I'm good. I think he's good.
I'm good. I mean, the offense goes through the run game.
It does.
That's always got to be something to consider, but Dak Prescott will do just enough to be a notable starting quarterback.
Yep, every single week. I don't want to talk about these last 2. Can we skip them?
Yes.
Zach Wilson, baby. Woo!
Zach Wilson, quarterback 9 on the week, 18 to 35 for 317 and 2.
That stat line is atrocious.
Yeah, he completed 50% of his passes. Yards per attempt. Can somebody do math for me? 317 divided by 18.
You're the math teacher.
Math teacher.
It's just under 17 yards in attempt.
Oh my word!
I think Check him out.
Oh, completion.
17 and a half yards per completion.
Oh my
He's way off.
Helmet.
I wasn't actually off.
I just wanted to say it. Zach Wilson, you're not considering him ever.
No.
Derek Carr, 20 of 38, 231 and 3, 20.2 fantasy points.
Bleh.
Yeah, I know we mentioned him in the Jalen Hurts replacement. I'm not too interested in that though for Derek Carr.
Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Kansas City rest of the year.
I ain't too bad actually.
Pittsburgh's been playing a lot better on defense lately.
They have.
San Francisco, I thought for a second that San Francisco was a little suspect in the secondary. Doesn't matter when you have a pass rush like theirs.
No, right. Oh, that's the big thing.
Can I also give you something for why wins aren't a quarterback stat?
Please.
On the season, Zach Wilson has a better winning percentage than Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Geno Smith, and let's say Trevor Lawrence.
Clip it. Clip that.
That is why wins are not a quarterback stat.
Clip
because
that.
Zach Wilson is 6-2. The rest of the Jets starting quarterbacks are 1-5.
We love Mike White, but that's not good for the guy.
Wins are not a quarterback stat. All right, moving on. Tight ends.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It's disgusting that the Jets have a winning record with that, man. Tight end booms of the week. We got to keep things rolling. George Kittle, tight end 1 on the week, 4 for 93 and 2. When 50% of your receptions are touchdowns, I hope you are a top 5 tight end on the week. Can we trust George Kittle going forward?
I'd say so.
No
Debo.
I mean, that does.
This was a matchup, though. Seattle Seahawks are just porous. They cannot figure out how to defend the tight end position.
He was averaging about 5 points over his last 3 games before this Seattle matchup. That's rough. I would not be surprised if we see George Kittle more as a left tackle rest of the season than we do as a receiver.
I think you have to play him, though. If you have him, you have to play him.
You have to play him. You have to play him.
Juwan Johnson, he was a tight end 2 on the week, 4 receptions. Another guy who had 50% of his receptions go for touchdown, 67 yards, 22.7 fantasy points. Streamable. Juwan Johnson has to be. He has to be streamable at this point. You look at his past 5 weeks, I believe he's been top 10 in 4 of the past 5. If I'm not mistaken, if I could get my phone to unlock. Someone fact check me. We're working on it.
Oh, wait. Yes,
Juwan
4 of the last
Johnson.
5. Yep, top 5 and 4 of the last 5.
He's been top 10 in 4 of his past 4 even. There wasn't even a gap in there. He's been top 10 4 of his, 4 of his past 5. You're right. There's a goose egg in there.
It's a bummer.
He's streamable. He's got to be one of your number 1 streaming options at tight end at this point. He is clearly involved in the red zone. Red zone targets go to Juwan Johnson.
He's a 2021 Dawson Knox. Let's just move on.
Yep.
Sorry.
Come on. Yes.
I learned my lesson.
Speaking of Dawson Knox, he was the tight end 3 on the week. 6 receptions on 8 targets. 8 targets a season high, 98 receiving yards a season high. 1 touchdown, 28.8 fantasy points for Dawson Knox. You want to trust Dawson Knox going forward? He's still rostered in what we talked about this before the episode, 75% of leagues.
Yeah.
That seems insanely high for how disappointing he's been this year.
Yeah, people have faith.
He's been a top 5 tight end the past 2 weeks, though.
It's quite the feat.
It's better than Travis Kelce. He hasn't been a top 5 tight end in the past 2 weeks.
He has not.
Man, he sucks. 10 receptions on 10 targets for 105 yards. And he's a tight end 4. What kind of garbage is this? 20.5 fantasy points?
Yeah.
The joke's old. 20.5 fantasy points for a tight end is incredible. And Travis Kelce, I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, he's consistently doing that.
He's number 1 rest of the season. CJ Uzama. Talk about 50% of your receptions going for touchdowns. How about 100%? 2 receptions, 2 targets, 41 yards, 2 touchdowns, 18.1 fantasy points. Tyler Conklin. Who? This saddens me, actually, though. I really like Tyler Conklin. And clearly Zach Wilson just comes to obliterate any glimmer of hope for the Jets except for the win column.
Apparently.
Garrett Wilson, no.
Apparently.
Tyler Conklin, no. Elijah Moore, a little bit better, but no.
Corey Davis. No.
Corey Davis was injured, was he not? Or was he back in lineup this week?
He was out this last week.
Evan Ingram, he was a tight end 6 on the week, 8 receptions on 10 targets for 62 yards, 14.2 fantasy points. Evan Ingram, he's got to be in your consideration for a streaming option every week.
Yeah, he definitely does. I mean, he's been playing really well. I mean, obviously 2 weeks ago he was tight end
39 fantasy points. Last week that was.
Yeah, last week that's what I meant. Top six tight end each of the last 3 weeks, starting to get involved. It's just a little scary because we're also saying Zay Jones at the same time. We're still saying trust Christian Kirk. Do we think that they can keep it up against New York? In New York, it's gonna be a tough game, but then they get Houston for the most of your fantasy championships. And if you do have a week 18 fantasy championship, they get Tennessee. So they do have some favorable matchups coming up. But yeah, I would say he's also a very streamable option. 7, 15, and 10 targets is hard to beat at this tight end.
I'm chasing volume at the tight end position this time of the year. Noah Fant, 5 of 6 for 32 in a score, 14.2 fantasy points. He has scored 14 plus in 2 of his past 3 with a goose egg in the middle of that. It's a gross name. I'm not excited to chase that.
Oh, wait a second, though. Hold on. Hold the phone. Who's getting surgery? Tyler Lockett. Do we not? Is it too far of a stretch to say that we see Noah Fant kind of step up in that? Obviously, Marquise Goodwin will still get his, but Noah Fant. Is there a chance we see a little more consistency out of Noah Fant?
He becomes more of an intriguing streaming tight end option. I'm not like rushing to be like, oh my gosh, Noah Fant, top 7 rest of season. I don't think it's impossible though.
Evan Ingram, Noah Fant, or Juwan Johnson next week.
Juwan Johnson. I'll chase the guy who's scoring touchdowns at an insane rate right now.
Where was this last year with Dawson Knox? I'm kidding.
I think I'd go.
You made me shut up after that. You're making me reconsider. Well, sorry, what was yours? I totally missed over my ignorance.
I just said I'd take Evan Ingram in that one, but we can keep moving.
Yeah, so let's keep moving. Darren Waller in his return, 3 for 48 in the score, 13.8 fantasy points. I expect him to get more involved in the future weeks. This was just a weird week for ball distribution in Vegas. Mitchell Wilcox. Who? Skip. 3 for 34 in a score. Brock Wright.
Skip.
1 for 51.
Another one play.
100% of his receptions went for touchdowns, 1 for 51 and 12.1 fantasy points. Let's move on to bus of the week with the running back position. This one brings a smile to my face, gentlemen. Miles Sanders. He's been really good this year. We have been willing to give Miles Sanders all the credit in the world for how good he has been this year. 11 attempts, 42 yards, caught a pass for negative 13 yards in a fumble, or negative 13 yards. I said negative 3. No, I said 13. Mm-hmm. Negative 13 and a fumble. 1.9 fantasy points on the day.
My hero.
He's tough day to be a Miles Sanders manager.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw. He's tweeted again saying, "I don't care about your ticket or your fantasy lineup. Stop adding me." What a guy!
What a guy, that Miles Sanders. Big advocate for the fantasy football community.
I'm really happy that I had him and this next guy we're going to talk about in my fantasy lineup in week 1 of the playoffs.
Hey, I was playing against him in week 1 of the playoffs, so I was very thrilled to see 1.9. Another bust on the week.
Sorry, that was. So we're currently recording this during Monday Night Football. Okay, Green Bay is up 24-12.
Yep.
Under 2 minutes ago, LA used their last timeout with 1:36. The ball is on the Rams 1. Green Bay ball. And Green Bay just kneels it. They don't. Just score. Jeez.
This is unbiased. He has no stake in the game. He just loves scoring touchdowns.
That one just doesn't make sense. Sorry. That I did not need to interrupt the show for that, but some things just irk me, and it's probably just Rodgers, honestly.
Yeah, LaFleur probably called AJ Dillon up the middle for his third touchdown of the game, and Rodgers like, nah,
we're kneeling.
F that.
Nah, bro.
Victory formation. Let's go, boys.
Jonathan Taylor, another bust on the week. Caught a pass for 13 yards. Suffered a high ankle sprain, obviously. We talked about that earlier in the episode. Nick Chubb, 21 attempts, 99 yards, 9.9 fantasy points. This is now back-to-back weeks. He's had sub 10-point weeks.
Back-to-back weeks.
3 in a row.
3 in a row since Watson returned. And one of them was against Houston.
So what do you make of that going forward? How does this impact Nick Chubb in your fantasy lineup? Do you take him out?
You can't. He had 99 yards. He scores a touchdown. All of a sudden, you're at 100. You're at 16 points. It's just you're just scared if you have Nick Chubb right now in your fans. Yeah, that's how you're gonna play. But that's
pick me up. I'm scared.
But that's what we said this whole year. We have said that this whole time. If you have Nick Chubb, you should be a little nervous every single week because if he doesn't score a touchdown this week yet,
Told y'all.
Nick Chubb finding the end zone. Like 2 peas in a pod. And if he doesn't score, you're scraping for points from Nick Chubb most weeks. Honorable mentions, Joe Mixon, 10.4 fantasy points. He was a running back 29. Just slightly disappointing. He didn't find the end zone in Cincinnati's comeback against Tampa. Isaiah Pacheco against Houston. 8.7 fantasy points. Got outshined by Jerick McKinnon. Running back 35 on the week. You have something you wanted to add there?
it's just Pacheco's just tough because if McKinnon's getting 8 receptions as a running back, it's hard to see him very involved in the passing game.
100%.
Yeah, I was literally Pacheco is Nick Chubb and Jerick McKinnon is Kareem Hunt, I guess.
Well, we
Austin
wanted
Eckler,
Kareem Hunt
Austin Eckler light. That's what Jerick
whatever-
McKinnon is right now.
Whatever thief of passing opportunities for Nick Chubb. But
JD McKissick.
Yeah, there it is.
there it is.
Rashad White, 5.3 fantasy points, running back 43 on the week. Antonio Gibson, 4.7, the running back 45. Jamal Williams, 3.3 fantasy points, the running back 54 on the week. Tyler, I know you have thoughts on this.
This is a second straight week of kind of a down week for Jamal Williams. He's consistently been under 45% or kind of around that 40% of snaps range. He's still getting double-digit carries. He'll find the end zone every now and then, but this is the third straight week below 40 rushing yards. And when you're not scoring touchdowns like he used to, these kind of weeks are going to be the norm, I guess. And he's getting Carolina, Chicago, and Green Bay. So in all honesty, he should be fine, but it's just worth noting. 3 straight weeks under 40 rushing yards for a guy that has been scoring touchdowns like no tomorrow.
The other thing too is he's 7 straight weeks of not averaging at least 4 yards per carry.
Just concerning.
There's just no efficiency whatsoever.
Wrapping out the bus, Deontay Foreman, 0.9 fantasy points. Yikes. Running back 67 on the week. That was not good for him this past week. Wide receiver bus. Devontae Adams. He has his brilliant weeks, and then the Raiders just decide to absolutely just nerf him. 6.8 fantasy points. A wide receiver 57. 4 for 28.
Just stupid.
You can't do anything other than start this man going forward. Can we leave it at that and just move on? Because we can't do any fancy digging or hot takes on this because you're playing Devontae Adams going forward.
This is why Derek Carr sucks. Devontae Adams has 1 less target than Tyreek Hill and 23 less receptions.
Oh gosh.
He is almost at a 50% catch rate. This is ridiculous. Derek Carr is going to get cut. Right.
Next New York Jets quarterback.
I was going to say New York Jets.
Call him up. Stephon Diggs, 10.7, wide receiver 41 on the week, 5 for 60, had a rushing attempt for -3 yards. If you're playing Stephon Diggs going forward, I don't know what to tell you here.
Yeah, that just sucks.
Just sucks. Sucks to be you.
Ha.
Sucks to be all of us who manage Stephon Diggs. I am one of those people. Amari Cooper, 9.8 fantasy points, wide receiver 43, 4 for 58. He's just not the same with Deshaun Watson.
Yikes. That sucks.
It's just bad.
I feel like I can't start him next week. Are
they at home or are they on the road? If they're on the road, that's a dead giveaway that you should sit him anyways.
I am between him and Mike Evans, and I don't know what to do.
Is he on the road?
He's at home.
Oh.
Against who?
New Orleans.
Oh.
What do I do? Him or Mike Evans?
I just cut both and just go no wide receiver.
And go Deonta Foreman, who just dropped 0.9. I'm going to be tearing up about this all week.
I'm not going to tell you who to play because I play you next week.
Oh, actually, I have Joe Mixon.
Oh, my.
Got him.
Well, I mean, Joe Mixon.
I genuinely
only 10
forgot I
fantasy
had-
points this week and no touchdowns. So...
I genuinely forgot I had him, so. Oops.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Let's go to the championship too, so I'm upset. Very upset. Mike Williams, 10.7 fantasy points, the wide receiver 40. Chris Olave, 8.3, the wide receiver 48. Marquise Brown,
Rip.
5.9, the wide receiver 60 with no Kyler. I don't want to play him. Brandon Ayuk, 3.9, the wide receiver 69. Nice on the week.
You snuck it in.
You haven't heard me do this before?
I do it all the
I
time.
do it all the time.
I have.
I just heard Ty start just stickers.
Quarterback bust of the week. Let's keep it moving. Justin Herbert, 10.7 fantasy points. Quarterback 24. Threw for 313 yards. And still only had 10.7 fantasy points because he didn't throw a touchdown. This Tennessee Titans defense. I kept this a pretty close game this week. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, I was too. But I mean, he kept him out of the end zone. They sure got the yards, but kept him out of the end zone.
Kept him out of the end zone. Deshaun Watson, 12.6, the quarterback 21. He is just not that same dude. 18 of 28 for 161 and 1, 6 attempts for 22 yards on the ground as well. He's not even streamable going forward. I have no interest in Deshaun Watson.
I'm not convinced that he practiced the entire 2 years he had off.
I don't think he did.
I genuinely don't think he picked up a football. So
it's just tough. It's been tough with Deshaun Watson. Geno Smith, 15.3 fantasy points, quarterback 15 on the week. They unfortunately wrote back.
moment of silence.
It's all right. He's still top 10 on the season. So
Yes, true.
Geno can still strut. Danny Dimes, 9.9, the quarterback 25 on the week. They just torched Washington on the ground. There was no need for Danny Dimes to get too involved in the passing attack. Tight end bus.
Here it is, Ty. Here it is.
I got to clear my throat for this. Mark Andrews, the tight end 21 on the week. It's becoming concerning.
It is concerning.
It's been concerning.
It has been concerning.
I'm concerned.
Mark Andrews, over the past 3 games, 9.4 fantasy points, 3.7 fantasy points, 6.1 fantasy points. Let's play a name game.
We need a graphic for the name game.
Your favorite, Tyler.
Disgust.
In terms of where you rank Mark Andrews rest of the season in comparison to blank player.
Yep.
Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson, who are you ranking higher rest of season?
Hawk.
TJ Hawkinson.
TJ Hawkinson. Mark Andrews or George Kittle?
George Kittle.
Kittle because of his upside.
I struggle. I lean George Kittle with no Deebo Samuel. Dalton Schultz or Mark Andrews?
Dalton Schultz.
Dalton Schultz for me as well. Darren Waller back from injury or Mark Andrews?
Darren Waller to the moon.
It's getting close. I might still lean Andrews on that one.
I think I'm going to lean Andrews as well, but that is, I agree with you, that's significantly close. Evan Ingram or Mark Andrews?
Mark Andrews.
Keep in mind the numbers we just threw out on Evan Ingram.
Mark Andrews.
Did not sway him. Mark Andrews. No, Evan Ingram.
Are you gonna?
Evan Ingram.
You're Evan Ingram over Darren Waller.
You switched to Evan Ingram.
This is why I don't like the name game, because I can't make up my mind. I'm going Mark Andrews. Final answer.
He wants Travis Kelce.
Just ask me Travis Kelce, please.
I'm gonna
We need to
lean.
get back on a hot streak here.
I'm gonna lean Mark Andrews. I'm still looking at targets 8, 7, 7, 6, 7 over the past 5 weeks. I'm gonna take that volume there. I know Evan Ingram has been getting volume as well. I'm gonna trust something has to come from Mark Andrews at some point. David Njoku or Mark Andrews?
Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews.
I'll take Mark Andrews there as well. Pat Freiermuth, Mark Andrews. Freiermuth got skunked this past week.
And with that, I'll take Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Andrews.
Take Andrews as well. This is the intriguing one. Chigakonkwo or Mark Andrews rest of season. Chigakonkwo, 10 plus fantasy points each of the past 3 weeks, 5 targets each of the past 4 weeks.
Since Derrick Henry was their leading receiver, I'm still going to go Mark Andrews.
I'll go Mark Andrews. Traylon Burks. Was he out this past week?
Yes, he was.
Traylon Burks coming back pushes me to Mark Andrews.
That is the exact reason I'll go Mark Andrews. Juwan Johnson. We talked about him earlier. Tight end 2, tight end 37, tight end 8, tight end 4, tight end 6, goose egg, tight end 2 the past 7 weeks. Juwan Johnson or Mark Andrews rest of season?
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Mark Andrews.
Is it bad? I'm tempted to say Juwan Johnson.
Yes.
Tell me why I shouldn't take Juwan Johnson. Tell me why I shouldn't.
If we're banking on someone to score a touchdown, I understand Juwan Johnson's done it, but also if the Ravens are going to score a touchdown, the probability of it going to Mark Andrews is very high. I don't think they get skunked again in the touchdown department, so I feel like they're probably just as likely. If you're looking at past games, though, I do understand taking Juwan Johnson.
Tell me why I shouldn't take Juwan Johnson right now.
Because you crucified Dawson Knox in 2021.
Got him.
I did. It's true.
But Cam's point also. Mark Andrews gets volume over Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson has been getting touchdowns, but you add the touchdowns back to Mark Andrews soon with Lamar Jackson coming back, maybe not this week, but the week after for sure. That's why I would go Andrews.
Okay, fine. Mark Andrews.
Yes. That's a win for the Bills.
Justice prevailed.
Now Juwan Johnson's going to just destroy him this week.
Tight end 1.
Now you'll understand why I was debating Juwan Johnson this whole time. TJ Hawkinson, 8.3, the tight end 18 on the week, 3 for 33, did have a 2-point conversion. I'm not worried about it. I'm still taking him over Mark Andrews rest of season, as we just discussed. Honorable mentions, David Njoku, only 5.8 fantasy points. Greg Dulcich against the Arizona Cardinals. If we would have done, I'm just going to be honest with the people, if we would have had a start of Saturday episode for you this past week, Greg Dulcich would have been my start of the week against the Cardinals. 2.1 fantasy points. The Denver Broncos offense is
Yeah, they're bad. And I mean, having no Russ was tough, but they're really bad.
They're really bad. All right, let's close out this episode because we are running way over time. Rapid fire waiver wire. Waivers do run tonight. We want to make sure you're prioritizing the right players because it now matters now more than ever. Now they're in the fantasy playoffs. So let's rapid fire our list of top waiver wire ads to close out the episode. All these players rostered in 50% of leagues, unless we make an exception, which we will for this first guy, Cameron.
Yeah, he's taking in 55% of Yahoo leagues, 43% sleeper. But Zay Jones, if we haven't convinced you by now that you should have him on your roster and probably be starting him, we haven't done our job. You need to pick up Zay Jones.
I'm going to take a victory lap on Zay Jones because how early did we call Zay Jones on our waiver wire videos?
Oh, since like week 6.
Week 3.
Whoa!
We told you. We told you. Hopefully you listened.
Way to go, Jackson. All right. Next one.
Tyler, next waiver wire ad.
Next waiver guy shares just the best first name on planet Earth. It's Tyler Algier. He's had double-digit carries in every game except 4 this year. He was ultra efficient in week 15, averaging 8.18 yards per carry. It's not likely to repeat, but volume that Algier gets, he's got to be someone that you have to at least stash on your bench.
I'm going to take Zach Moss here. Next waiver wire, rapid fire here. Jonathan Taylor's replacement, 24 touches in his absence once he left the game. I'll take that all day long. I'll take 24 touches as a replacement option for Jonathan Taylor going forward.
My next one is we've been saying it for a while, but handcuff running backs. If you lose Joe Mixon this week and you don't have Samaje Perine, and then next week you need a running back and Samaje Perine scores 21 points on someone else's bench, you're going to be a little upset. So grab your handcuffs now before you need them next week.
Just like Zach Moss. Oh. Get him before your studs go down.
Yes.
We're not telling you your studs are going to get injured, but if you were Jonathan Taylor manager and you had Zach Moss on your roster, you're feeling a lot better right now.
Yes.
Tyler, your final waiver wire ad here.
Jahan Dotson. We touched on him when we were going through the wide receiver booms after his wide receiver 9 finish on the week. He has a touchdown in back-to-back weeks and I touched on the situation also. Washington is barely hanging on to the last wild card spot, so they will need to keep winning. So that bodes well for Jahan Dotson. Again, the volume has not been great, but again, someone to stash on your bench.
Yeah, and my last one, Treylon Burks. He's rostered in only 48% of leagues. This man needs to be on your roster. Before his injury, 18 fantasy points in week 11, 17 in week 12. His one play, his one reception that he had before leaving the game, he played 18% of the snaps and he got injured in that game. One reception, 25 yards, and a score. Treylon Burks needs to be on your roster. This Tennessee Titans offense needs him back. This passing attack needs Treylon Burks to thrive. So if he's not on your roster already, make sure you go pick him up now.
Yep.
Anything you two want to add before we wrap up the episode? Because we are running overtime here.
Keep fighting the good fight.
That is so nice to hear in person again. It has been a pleasure to record in person with you fellas again. Let's do it again sometime soon.
Sometime soon. It's been 3 Stooges being dudes. The fancy football, that was so cheesy. The fancy football fellas, I hate that. 3 Stooges being dudes, the fancy football fellas. FFL is on Twitter. The FFL is on Instagram. Fantasy football fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subbed. Have your noties on. Same for the podcast as well. We will see you all midweek for a preview of Week 16 Christmas weekend action. We're looking forward to it. Take care. Stay safe. We will see you all soon. Deuces.
Deuces.